What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Matt Bracken, it's Monday, 1:15 p.m. Eastern, October 20th. And I'm going to turn it right over to you and say, where do you want to start?
Trump was just doing a press conference to, I don't know when this will go up on the, up on the various YouTubes.
Tomorrow.
But
Tomorrow. It'll be, yeah.
But Trump was just speaking with the Prime Minister of Australia in the White House and taking some questions. And, with his usual bombast, bragging about how great tariffs are, and America makes the greatest of everything, greatest weapons. Everybody wants our weapons, which to me is either he knows he's lying or he's just delusional, because Russia is just pounding anything we send into Ukraine. Patriots, HIMARS just gets eradicated. It doesn't even. They just set the thing up in a Iskander will hit it. Boom. So I don't know if Trump is being kept in a bubble or what, but so he's the Australia opening is leading to 2 weeks of Trump doing like a big world tour. Trump is going to be going to Hungary this Friday, and he's going to be meeting Putin. And this is on kind of like neutral turf, because Viktor Orban has refused to go along with NATO and the EU in terms of blocking out Russia, not accepting Russian oil and gas, things like that. So Orban, and to a lesser extent in different ways, Poland, they have been holding out against some of the EU mandates, like, on border control, things like that. So it's an interesting place. It's showing the Orban is like almost like a public enemy number one of the EU leaders, because he's not going along with them. So meeting Putin in Hungary is not only saying, well, it's neutral turf, it's in between, but it's also really a big thumb in the eye to the EU, to van der Leyen and Starmer, et cetera. It's just putting the thumb right in their eye. And it's sort of following on what they did with Zelensky. They totally dissed Zelensky. They didn't meet him at the airplane. They had no press conference in the White House. Basically, Zelensky got treated like a redheaded stepchild, told get the hell out and don't come back. And there's some writing about this call that Putin had with Trump, and I think that Trump understands, no matter what he says about our great weapons, best in the world, everybody wants our weapons. I think he understands that he's got no winning hand in Ukraine, and he's just got to end this thing. So I think that he's going to try to come to. I think he'll try to be more productive in Hungary than he was in Alaska last time he met Putin. And this sort of reminds me of at the end of World War II, a couple of big conferences happened. And I think that Trump, with his massive ego, I think that he considers himself in this league, and he would like to put a stamp on his presidency in terms of the history, up with the big conferences, which were, let's see, you had all in 1945, or you had the Yalta Conference, which was Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, in Russia. Then Roosevelt died, and you had Potsdam, which was sort of like laying out the post-war order, and that was Truman, um, Churchill, and Stalin. You know, the big meetings, the big cheeses, the big honchos, the shot callers. They're going to get together, and all the pipsqueaks are just going to have to line up. Of course, in those days, uh, Churchill and Great Britain, they weren't in the league of Russia, Soviet Union then, and America, but there was still a British Empire. They still had a pretty, significant large navy, a large economic force, even though it was hollowing out rapidly. You know, the British had already begun to hollow out their empire even before World War II. And at the end of World War II, actually in 44 at Bretton Woods. So in 44 in New Hampshire, the Bretton Woods Conference, the big honchos weren't there, but their treasurers were. And that's where they basically handed the baton from the British pound sterling as the world reserve currency to the American dollar backed by gold. That was at Bretton Woods. So when you put things together like Potsdam, Yalta, Bretton Woods, then you fast forward to today and you say, okay, Putin is going to meet Trump next Friday. 1 week after that, Trump is going to South Korea and he's going to meet Chairman Xi. Okay. I don't think
you
that
mean Xi, right? China?
Xi, yeah, XI,
No,
however you
Xi.
pronounce it.
Yeah. Well, when you
It's
said
funny.
Xi, I thought I was thinking Zelensky, so that's why I was.
It's funny when you have automatic captioning on YouTube and they're just phonetically captioning. Sometimes it'll say like she said, he, she for XI. So anyway, the chairman of the Communist Party of China is going to be meeting Trump. And this is I think they're edging around, they're doing a big dance about a restructuring of the world global economic system. You know, Trump is never going to have a press conference where he says, I recognize that our empire has peaked, the arc of our empire has crested over, and we're entering a new multipolar world. He's never going to say that. Okay. Even if that's what he's saying privately or thinking privately, he's never going to say that because as a negotiator, you always come into the negotiation. I'm going to win. We're never going down. The dollar forever. Those BRICS nations better get in line, or we're going to shut them out of the world's greatest economy. You go into these deals from projecting a total power of a strength of power that you're not declining, that everything's great. But I think it's clear and this now kind of merges over with what's been happening in precious metals over the last month and longer, that the obviously gold broke through 4,000 and it's staying there. Silver broke through 50 and it's staying there.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
But some of the things that are going on, everybody's probably already up on the paper trade has been smashed. The banks that were short are desperate because they've got to literally charter jumbo jets to fly silver into London to meet the standing for delivery orders. So instead of 99% of silver being a hypothetical market in paper contracts, everybody is now saying, I want the physical. Send me the physical. Well, London doesn't have it. And they're either going to have to go into default or they've got to get it somewhere. And that means they're paying out the wazoo, to get physical silver. Well, China is just suspended silver sales. So, and as we know, Russia and China have been accumulating gold like crazy. They've been shipping it to themselves from around the world like crazy. So what does this tell me? The world is going into their corners. There's a new alignment that's lining up, and Russia and China are in a military alliance along with Iran, and they're tying themselves together economically. They share the same continent, so it's much easier for them to do railroads and natural gas pipelines, things like that, because it's one continent. But they seem to be preparing for a post-dollar world, and the fact that China is not allowing the physical silver to leave China tells me that they know that London is screwed, and they're happy to see them get screwed. They could take some of the pressure off if they were allowing the silver to be flown to London. They're not. So it's coming from America primarily, going to London to fulfill these contracts. But I just get the feel that the world is choosing which corner they're going into. And this is also related to our actions in Venezuela and now Colombia, with with our fleet down there, doing the chest thumping, blowing up the drug boats, quote unquote. Yeah, and they are drug boats. Fishermen don't go out with 400 horsepower motors, and no fishing gear. So yeah, they may be fishermen by career, but on that mission, they're a drug runner. Okay, be that as it may, all the chest thumping over Venezuela is really aimed at China, because China's been moving in, taking economic control in Panama, gaining much more influence along with Russia in Venezuela, building a huge container facility in the Bahamas. So I think that what Trump is doing is like throwing brushback pitches. It looks like it's at Venezuela, but it's also at China. And at the same time, in the press conference today, an Australian asked him about Taiwan. And it sounded like, no, China's not going to do anything with Taiwan. He wasn't bellicose at all when it came to China and Taiwan. He wasn't making the big threats like, our Navy will sink your Navy, which would be ridiculous, because it couldn't. Not within, 1,000 miles of China. Their missiles would annihilate our fleet. Our fleet would run out of missiles and China would just be getting started. Anyway, he didn't sound bellicose about that at all. And maybe it's just my own, trying to fill in the blanks of my own hypothesis. But I think that Trump is looking at a reinforced Monroe Doctrine, and it'll be, that's why we're talking about Greenland. That's why you meet Putin in Alaska. That's why we're throwing all these wild pitches around South America. We're establishing a powerful reinforced Monroe Doctrine. I think he's going to say, okay, Russia, I understand now, finally. Ukraine is your backyard. Mexico and Central America, that's our backyard. We wouldn't want you in here giving missiles to Mexican radicals to fire into Dallas. So we now are going to say, all right, they'll never come out and say these words, but he'll say the killing has to end, 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers every week dying. And they're going to say, all right, Russia, you got your sphere of influence. China, you've got your sphere of influence. Japan and South Korea, you're going to have to defend yourself or deal with China, because it's not an area that we can dominate anymore, not with our military spread all over the world. But the Caribbean and South America and Panama, we are going to take firm control of that. So we're going to, and I compare it to the Risk board. Everybody's familiar with the game of Risk. Depending on how many players there are, a good strategy is to just go right for North America, because you can defend it easily and build up your forces while the other players annihilate each other in Eurasia. And now it's going to, well, look, Russia and China as allies. That's a big problem. That's, the Mackinder world island theory. That's going to be a powerful bloc, economic and military bloc, stronger than anything we can put up with. So we can't keep pushing Russia into the arms of China. We have to make a rapprochement with Russia and forget Europe. They're basically a dead man walking. They have no economy. They have no energy. They've completely gone on a suicide, economic suicide path, getting rid of their nuclear plants, getting rid of their coal plants. They invested with Russia in the Nord Stream and we blew it up. Now what have they got? Solar power and wind generators. It's not enough. Now they're forced to buy LNG from us, from Texas and Louisiana, which is like 3 or 4 times the price of natural gas from Russia. So Europe is almost out of the picture. Trump is just disregarding Europe at this point. That's why he's not. That's why he's not afraid to go right to Hungary. Meeting Putin in Hungary is giving the double barrel middle finger, to the Europeans. You don't even matter anymore. You're a theme park. Nobody wants your crappy cars or cuckoo clocks. Forget you. It's the big boys now. It's Trump, Chairman Xi, and Vladimir Putin, and that's it. And the rest of you are just going to have to get into one of our spheres of influence. Now, it's not as simple as it was. Obviously, it never really was. But when you look at the board game of risk, you can only cross the oceans at certain points. What China has done in the last 20 years is build these super ports like in Peru, and in Mexico, where they can just send huge container ships straight into South America and Central America, and then put the stuff on trucks. And it's so if you look at the amount of trade, if you look at South America and you look at the amount of trade that they did with America as a percentage of their foreign trade, America used to be like, 3/4 of their foreign trade. And now it's like we're like a quarter and China is half. So China has just begun to dominate the economies of South America and all these projects all over Africa, which is, Africa is a unique case. It has its own problems, but it's a vast storehouse of mineral wealth, among other things. And China's been making big inroads there. So we're now at this huge board game, and I think that Trump sees himself sort of like having a Bretton Woods, a new financial system, a new Yalta or Potsdam, where it's instead of Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt, it's going to be Trump, Xi, Putin, and they're going to decide the new working system for the next half century. Instead of a total kinetic war. Hopefully, we can avoid that. But you can see that this is happening, and the flow of gold going to these powers, to these three powers. Everybody is pretending like the dollar will be around forever, but they're acting like they're going to a gold standard. I mean, their actions say they don't believe that the dollar is going to be the world reserve currency forever.
Well, and so I'm glad you said that. I mean, one, in regards to the gold, and this is what I've told people now, and you and I've talked about this, like buy gold, buy gold, buy gold, but it's in the government's best interest for the value of gold to go up. And you're seeing that right now in regards to China and the United States. They want it to go up. So that tells me, and I don't provide financial advice. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but when the government wants it to go up, I have a feeling it's going to go up. Because
it's the only way. They have to inflate away the debt.
Right. So
revaluing gold helps in that direction, but you have to do that without creating a Weimar hyperinflation. So it's pretty difficult to ride that tiger. If you want to inflate, minimize your debt through inflation, but you don't want your people in bread lines having food riots.
And storming the Capitol, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So you've got to not have a French Revolution Bastille Day. So, it's not exactly an easy needle to thread.
The silver side of it, in the London bullion market, the LBMA, who or, individually or group that came in and withdrew all that silver. They wanted that physical silver. So that started this domino effect. Who did that though?
Silver is such a unique case because in terms of its monetary value, it's a pittance compared to world gold reserves. So it was possible for the price to be kept down artificially all these years with these paper shorts. So the paper market dominated the spot price, but it was all hypothetical. It wasn't based on real silver changing hands. It was just the names on the paper that was trading pages of paper. No silver was moving. Now people are saying I want physical delivery, and it upset the entire system. So now that era is over, and a couple of unique qualities of silver that are very different from gold are now suddenly going to emerge. One is that it's a super important technological metal used in industry. It's used in the EV car batteries. It's used in all the circuit boards. It's used in all the high tech everything, solar panels, and it's used up. That it's not like gold, other than somebody making a ring or something. There's not a ton of gold that's used in electronics. A little bit, but not like silver. It's funny. Silver is the most reflective and conductive metal, and gold is the most like ductile. And they have different qualities in metallurgically speaking. But silver, when it's used in industry, it's gone. So the amount of silver that's above the ground is being used up by industry faster than it's coming out of the ground. And there are no silver mines. This is another thing that people have to understand. There's not a quote unquote silver mine. When they mine for lead and zinc, and they do this process of grinding it up and then using separation, various forms of centrifuges and electrolysis and all these huge industrial applications in giant factories, the silver is like one strata of that, tons and tons of dirt, of ore. The silver is one strata that's extracted, but there's not like a silver mine. Let's go find a silver mine. So you have to, investing in silver mines is sort of like just saying, I'm investing in the big lead and zinc open pit mines, and we hope to get more silver out of it. But you can't turn that on like a spigot. So the industrial demand is coming from one direction and growing. And then another thing that I'm almost one of the few that even talks about this. There are a couple of the bullion podcasters that talk about it. Most economists think, even if we go to a gold standard, that the gold's just going to be in the background somewhere, backing up some new currency, a stable coin, a central bank digital currency. But they don't ever really consider that, there might be a period where people have to take a physical silver coin to buy something, because there isn't a new system that we just jumped to. We may go through a period where fiat has collapsed, banks aren't working, ATMs are empty. You can't withdraw your bank account. You'll find out that it's, oh my goodness, no, because so many people are trying to withdraw your money, this new regulation kicks in and you can't get it for a week. And you can only take out 5% a week. It's not like you can go to the bank. Try it. Go to the bank and say, I want to take $20,000 out in cash. They'll laugh at you. You can't do it, right? So when the fiat begins to collapse, people are going to find out that they're trapped. And it's not going to be like, oh, somebody's going to ride in on a white horse, and on Monday there's bank closures and the fiat crashes, and on Tuesday they're going to have a new stablecoin system that everybody can use. People hypothetically think, well, they'll put this much new stable coin in everybody's existing bank account just to keep the stores running and the supply chains running. I think that's like real hopium. I think there's a great chance that there could be weeks to months to years where one system collapses and implodes, but there isn't another system just waiting there. We could have a situation similar to, say, Argentina in 2000, where you have months of the banks being closed. But in Argentina, when their peso economy collapsed, people used dollars, physical paper dollars. People that would fly to Miami, get dollars, fly back, or their family would mail it to them. So they were using physical dollars because there was still a world currency, the dollar, even after the peso collapsed and cratered. So there had to be a period where there is no more Argentine peso economy. What are we using? Well, do you have some dollars? You can still buy stuff in the gray market with dollars, or it's just pure barter. Grandma's necklace for a bag of food. That's it, pure barter. But in the United States, we have another thing in the middle. A lot of silver bugs have been buying this stuff, for forever, right? And
Is that a silver quarter? What is that?
that's a 50-cent piece. It's now worth like $18. Okay. Um, so that there's silver value in that. Okay. Because it's 90% silver. Two of these are not a full ounce. But anyway, the conversions are all real simple. So a silver dime would be like, a $5 bill today, a $4 bill today for buying. And people say, well, I'll just use barter. Barter will work for a while, but it's like, I have a cow, but you're a dentist. I can't trade a half of my cow for a root canal.
I was gonna
You know what I
say,
mean? The dentist doesn't need half of a cow.
I was going to say root canal.
Right. What are you going to, I have a generator, right? But you have a truck. Well, I can't trade a quarter of my truck for that generator. There has to be a medium of exchange to lubricate all these transactions. Barter absolutely will be the first thing. But if you've got a house full or like a garage sale, and you're going to take it to the gray market, farmer's market that sprang up, you're going to, assuming you can get fuel for your vehicle, you're going to load all this crap, take it 10 miles to a farmer's market, hoping that somebody at that farmer's market needs exactly what you want, and you need exactly what they have to trade, right? So you go to the farmer's market with 10 chickens, maybe you'll find something to sell. But if you go there with furniture, people don't need furniture. This is a period where the actual physical coinage, and not just the junk 90, but like things like the small silver bars, the silver, what are called silver rounds. They're just 1 ounce of 999 silver made by private mints, but recognizable, authentic, or silver eagles, American, minted silver eagle 1 ounce coins. But what I'm saying is, when barter begins to clot up, barter will be the first thing you do in your neighborhood, right? I have some frozen meat that's going to go bad when my freezer runs out of electricity. So first thing you're going to do is barter, but then to get you through to that new system that we don't know when it will arise. When if the dollar collapses, we go into for example, a hyperinflation, you're going to need some means of exchange. And I'm not saying that this is like the panacea and have silver and everything will be great. Not at all. But because there will be a demand for these things, the value of silver compared to gold, obviously compared to the dollar that's already, collapsing, the value of the silver will be greater in proportion to the value of the gold. Right now, the ratio is like 80-1, gold to silver. And historically, it's around 15 or 20-1. They come out of the ground at 10-1. They are processed at 10-1, gold and silver. It always was 15 or 20 because it's much more difficult to mint, 15 times more coins out of silver than one coin out of gold. So the whole 19th century, the 1 ounce American coin was a $20 gold piece. That was equal to 20 silver dollars. And that's how people were paid. Your pay could be 2 silver dollars a day. And that paid for your food, your horse's feed, the tools you had to buy, everything. 2 silver dollars a day was a standard kind of a wage. Or if you were accumulating too much of that, you could convert it into $20 gold pieces. America became a world power on the gold standard from the 1820s through the 20th century, early 20th century on the gold standard. That's when we built our railroads. That's when we built our big ships, our industry. That's when America became a global superpower. Same thing in Britain on a gold standard, most of the 19th century into the 20th century on the gold standard. Britain became a superpower, industrial superpower, biggest fleet navy in the world, biggest economy in the world. All the people that say, oh, it's a barbarous relic, it impedes growth, they're gaslighting. America and Britain's most great glory era of growth, economic power and growth was on a gold standard. Because you can't cheat. You can't cheat when you got to deliver the physical, or you have a contract that says, I can demand it I can take delivery in physical. That was considered as good because it was legit. You knew that they weren't making up fake contracts. If they did, it would be fraud. So even up until 1968, our American dollars were silver certificate dollars. They said right on them, redeemable in silver. If you thought the paper money sucked, you could go to your bank with a $5 bill and they'd hand you 5 silver dollars. That ended in 1968. Then Nixon closes the gold window in 71, and we're just completely fiat after that. No difference between the American dollar, the rupee, the peso, the ruble, nothing. All it's backed up by is promises, the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. And now it's going to the end. It's like the balloon keeps expanding. Eventually, it's going to pop. There's just no way around it.
What do you think about Argentina? Earlier in the year and even last year, you heard about all these great things Milei is doing. He was doing so many cuts. Argentina's on the path, and then next thing you know, he's over here, needing $20 billion for I think it was $20 billion for a bailout.
We're basically buying his pesos to keep him afloat, and he's going to, China's got a big, like Cape Canaveral in Argentina under a previous administration. China is strip mining the oceans on both Chile and Argentina side.
For the lithium? For what, lithium?
No, for their fish. I mean, they right up to their economic zones, you can see on satellite pictures, night satellite pictures, it looks like bigger than Buenos Aires and Rio de Janeiro, up and down the coast of China, all the Chinese fishing boats just strip mining the oceans. So Trump is trying to buy the favors of Argentina. We want to keep a grip on South America in this new game of risk. We're going to eventually start pushing China's fleets, which are just extinction fishing both sides of South America, these rich currents, that bring in all these fish and squid. The Chinese are just strip mining it to extinction level. And after, I don't know if this is all going to work, but I think after we've cleared the northern tier, this is the plan at least, Venezuela, Colombia, Guyana, Panama, we're going to start pushing south. Chile is already pretty, stable country. Argentina, we want on our side, but Argentina produces beef, but they don't produce any finished products. I forget what podcast I saw recently made a great point. We used to think that the hardest thing was going from like a developing country with nothing to establishing a middle class. But it turns out it's very hard also to go from a middle class country to like a high tech country. doing just small industrial stuff, for your own housing is not the same as building jets and smartphones to really increase your people's standard of living. So a lot of countries are stuck like at that middle class level. They can afford to buy Toyotas, but they're not making them, and they're not. Brazil's trying to get to that takeoff point. They have their own aerospace industry. They've got obviously a lot of resources. They have a completely screwed political system in Brazil now. It's an example of pure judicial tyranny where, the previous governor or president, Bolsonaro, he's in house arrest with an ankle monitor. He could wind up, dying in prison. And it's because Brazil is now run by their version of a Supreme Court. And it's a complete judicial tyranny. So even given that, and Trump being a friend of Bolsonaro, Trump has to right now make nice with Lula, because of the rare earths in Brazil. It's another place where you can get rare earths. So, Trump hates Lula, put Bolsonaro in, house arrest. But and many of Bolsonaro's lieutenants and assistants from the previous administration are in prison. They're in prison. So Trump would not be doing any kind of deals with Lula, except we need the rare earths. We need some bargaining chip to tell China that you don't have us completely, with a knife at our throat over the rare earths. And see, this is part of the world dividing into lines now. Before World War II, one of the reasons for Japan attacking Pearl Harbor, we had cut off most of their oil imports. We refused to sell to them. You can say, well, any country can sell to people they want. If I don't want to sell a cuckoo clock from Switzerland to Germany, that's Switzerland's right. Who cares? But you get to a point where you're so dependent on an import, like Japan was on oil and iron ore and rubber, and we're sanctioning Japan and cutting them off, essentially starving their economy. People go to war over things like that. So now we're in a position where we can't build American jets and American missiles without Chinese rare earths.
Isn't that amazing that we've gotten to this point now where the United States is not a sovereign country and you have to get China's permission to go to war?
But countries do go to. Japan did this in end of the 30s. We sanctioned Japan after Manchuria. We cut them off, and their generals said, we have this window. If we don't attack and knock America out of the Pacific and then take what's what they called the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Malaysia, Indonesia, a lot of the Pacific Islands. If we don't knock America out and take these things by force, in 2 years, we'll have no economy, we'll be starving. Well, now Trump and Xi are negotiating over, you have to give us the rare earths. And it's funny because it's not like somewhere in China on the map, you can say like giant rare earth deposit here. My understanding is, there may be some soil that's better than others, but you're basically, which country is more willing to strip mine, the state of Rhode Island and then, put it through feed it into a refinery to get out the rare earths. It's a huge, filthy endeavor. So you need some countries that are willing to just absolutely despoil like vast tracts of their land, right? And feed all that earth into a refinery, and America doesn't want to do that. Our EPA wouldn't allow it. It would take you 20 years to get permission, but we need the rare earths now. And you can't, and mines are something where, you might need it, but you can't just turn on a mine. It doesn't work like that. So China has the processing where rare earths are coming out at the end of their process. We're saying, let's try to work with Brazil and find it in Africa or find it in other places. Maybe it's in Ukraine. Maybe we'll get, some of it out of Ukraine after this war is settled. But China has us by the short hairs because we've allowed ourselves to get into a position of relying for them on these strategic minerals.
You can't make missiles. Can't make tomahawk missiles. I mean, I had a breakdown percentage wise each division of the military and how dependent. I mean, it's over 70% for every weapon made in each division needs some type of Chinese mineral.
And this is where real politics comes in. Trump is he's a blowhard. I mean, I love the guy in a lot of areas, and a lot of other areas can't it's drives me crazy, but he can't blow too hard at China, because if China moves to Taiwan, that's like 2/3 of the semiconductors that we rely on. Even if the Taiwanese sabotage their own plants, then we don't get the semiconductors. Remember, there was the shortage during COVID when global trade had kind of frozen up temporarily. Detroit had all these cars and trucks that were like 99% finished, but we can't make the windows go up and down because the semiconductors aren't here. So, if China doesn't want to completely wreck the world economy, I don't think that they're going to kinetically attack Taiwan. They'll keep posturing towards it, sort of the way that Iran keeps posturing towards more enrichment of uranium. That was their strategy for years and years. Our leverage is release the sanctions or we'll keep processing uranium. Doesn't mean that they wanted to actually build a bomb and use it on Israel. They could have in secret decades ago if that was their plan. And I think that China's leverage is watch out or we might invade Taiwan. But that's the end of the world economy. If they invade Taiwan, we go kinetic in Japan, South Korea. The whole world's in a global Great Depression for we don't know how long, assuming it doesn't go nuclear.
Well, also too, now the United States, I mean, they're recognizing that they have to start, digging up their own minerals here, and but you have to build the infrastructure.
It's years.
It took China 40 years to get to where we're at now.
We can't even get the process started. Everybody probably by now has seen like the world's highest bridge in China that they built in like 3 years. It's over this gorge, so it's the highest from like the water down at the bottom of the canyon to the top of the bridge. It's beautiful. It's unbelievable, right? But they can build those things faster than we can get the permits for like building the replacement for the World Trade Center. We were in World War II, we were turning out like a Liberty ship, merchant ship every day, like an assembly line of ships. We were turning out like, a dozen B-29 bombers a day. Now we are handcrafting F-35s that are, like $1 billion or something each, then can only fly a third of the time. We're not a serious country. No matter, all of Trump's bluster is for the internal American audience. Yay, go America. Yeah, we're the best.
Fuck around and find out. Fuck around and find out.
But Russia and China know different. We send HIMARS to Ukraine and they don't even get assembled before, a ballistic missile hits the thing. I don't know how many Americans have died over there because a lot of these systems, there's no way Ukrainians are running them. And some of these training and command and control buildings that have been hit, they say a lot of like Germans and French have been killed. I'm sure there's some Americans in there. Then they'll come up with the guy died in a car crash in Germany. If he's somebody important that somebody at the field grade or higher level, like a major or higher, when he's suddenly blown up in Ukraine, they have to create a car crash in Munich to cover it. It's going on.
Are you surprised that Israel Gaza is not holding up so far?
No, I'm not surprised at all. That's never going to be solved. And God bless anybody that tries to go in there being peacekeepers, because, it's like the scorpion and the tarantula in the jar. And I'm going to like stick my hand in there and coax them apart. It's not happening. There are end timers on both sides of that equation. Accelerationist doesn't even cover it. There are end timers. Huckabee is our ambassador to Israel Huckabee is an end timeser. He believes that Netanyahu is a direct descendant of Moses, direct. That the Ten Commandments were handed to Moses, who passed them down, 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 and now Netanyahu is holding the Ten Commandments. And Jesus won't come back until we have this battle of Armageddon. It's crazy when we have people, Americans and Israelis, that believe this. And on the other side, there are Palestinians that no matter what will, if they have a hand grenade, they'll use it to blow up an Israeli, period. No matter what the other Palestinians want, there will always be a guy that will use the hand grenade. And the Israelis and the Palestinians are not going to find peace. That's why Netanyahu just wanted to ethnically cleanse it. That's why I think October 7th was a green flag mission. They knew it was happening. They let it happen because they needed a sufficient casus belli to just turn Gaza into rubble, and drive the people out, either kill them or drive them out. But I don't think they'll be driven out. But I don't think there's any. I think we'll see another missile war with Iran this fall. And all of these things are coming together. Trump going to Hungary, then meeting Chairman Xi in 2 weeks. I mean, and October is the traditional month for a stock market crash, on top of everything else. Do you consider that all of our debt to GDP ratios, all of these things are historically unsustainable?
Do you think they're going to be, the Middle East, do you think they're going to be successful with what they want to do with Gaza? Or do you think it's just going to be an endless carousel?
Endless carousel. I think they'll be back in a this is just like a breather. This is a pause. But
how are those people surviving though, Matt?
They keep moving around. I mean, everybody's narrative is false. If you listen to the Israelis, the Palestinians have all been partying and eating great stuff, taking the hostages to the beach for swims. And if you listen to Hamas, 90% of the people there are killed, buried under rubble. So all of their narratives are lies over there. And I don't want to put my hand in the jar with the scorpion and the black widow spider. I just don't want to. It's like cobras and black mambas, and we're going to have a peace treaty. No, it's never going to happen. That's not going to happen. But I think that Trump is trying to make some kind of grand master deal. But there are people over there that will just screw it up every time. And I do believe Trump was very angry with Netanyahu after the Qatar strike, where he hit the Hamas negotiating team on an American base in Qatar without telling us. So we don't know what's happening in private. Netanyahu might have been read the riot act, any more shenanigans like that, and you get nothing from us. Remember, every bomb that gets dropped in Gaza was unloaded from an American plane the day before. There's a conveyor belt of C-17s flying into Israel with those 2,000-pound bombs.
Well, that's why I wonder if China now is, putting the slap down on saying, all right, we're not going to provide the minerals anymore for you to make these weapons to be able to fire them at Iran.
Yeah, the minerals, and also the silver. We're not going to backstop London. London, if you've got, no pants, if your pants are down, the world's going to see it because we're not backstopping you. We're not allowing our silver traders to trade with you, even though they're going to get huge profits by doing it. Because they're so desperate in London. China has said, no, we're closing the silver window. So everybody is stocking up in their own corner. Maybe it'll be a grand peace deal like a Yalta and Potsdam and Bretton Woods, or maybe it'll be, financial collapse, Great Depression. Everybody's just trying to grab physically American military, just trying to completely blockade South America, keep any Chinese shipping out, keep the Chinese fishing fleets away from South America. Same thing in Asia, China just saying, nothing else going in and out of Taiwan, blockade, not attacking Taiwan, not invading it, but a blockade. We could slide into this kind of a backdoor into a real world war just by ships suddenly sinking. Nobody claiming credit. But, there was a period in World War I where the Germans were putting ads in American newspapers, don't get on these ships. There's a state of war. And if you get on the Lusitania, right, no guarantees. And we sent the Lusitania right under Ireland, like the most guaranteed U-boat honeypot of all time, right into U-boat alley. We can be in a situation, because we're already doing these like bogus acts with the so-called Russian shadow fleet of oil tankers. There was a ship like a year ago that got sunk in the Mediterranean. That was a Russian ship that was very suspicious, that whether it was taken out from a bomb placed inside or a torpedo, and a very important Russian ship. So in terms of what it was carrying, which is another story, but never mind the Nord Stream pipeline. That was the biggest act of industrial sabotage in history against one of our own allies. And we just said, oh, Russia must have done it. We're still denying that we had anything to do with it. We did it. But so people will start doing things like cutting underwater fiber optic cables. That's a real easy trick. Almost all of the internet goes on the seabed now. It's very little is in the satellites. It's all in the seabed, in these fiber optic cables. And it'll be real easy to start playing tit for tat, screwing with people's economies. What, isn't part of the internet is down today?
Yeah, I think it's back up now. But earlier this morning, AWS was reporting a pretty wide outage. Venmo, I know, was one of the sites that was impacted. Do you think, shifting over domestically, do you think that Portland, Chicago, D.C., now Trump's talking about San Francisco in terms of the National Guard, are we in a civil war, Matt?
Yes. Yeah, that's absolute secession. It's no different than when George Wallace, said, ain't no way we're desegregating these schools. And Eisenhower sent the army. This is something so amazing that the Democrats, and there's so little historical perspective. I heard this on Bannon, and I made a meme about it a few days ago with Kennedy and John F. Kennedy and Trump. So Trump sent 200 National Guard to Portland to help guard the federal building, the ICE facility, and 300 to Chicago. So if you are covering something 24 hours a day with say 200 people, you got to divide it into at least 4 to have like 3 shifts plus administration and like a weekend shift maybe. So sending 200 means 50 on the street at any one time. 50 more people in uniform in a city like Portland, or say 75 per shift in Chicago, is nothing. It's literally nothing. How many troops do you think John F. Kennedy sent to the University of Mississippi in October of 1962 because they wouldn't desegregate Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi? So it was 200 for Portland. This is Trump, the military authoritarian, right? The dictator, the king. He sent 200 to Portland and 300 to Chicago. How many, not National Guard, active duty Army troops did John F. Kennedy send to Mississippi? Do you have any idea?
I don't, but let me take a crack. 100?
31,000. 31,000. The entire 101st Airborne Division from Kentucky.
I'm going to have to edit that guess out by 100.
31,000. And it was, yay, Kennedy's being decisive. We can't let those rednecks refuse a federal order. So now the legitimate federal order is we're getting the illegal aliens out. It's the law. They're in the country illegally. we're sending them home. It's the law, federal supremacy clause, right? It's if you don't like it, get Congress and change the law. But Pritzker and whoever the governor in Oregon is, and then you got Newsom in California, they're saying we are not allowing ICE. It's an ICE-free zone. We're not going to cooperate. We're going to warn people.
That's what the mayor in Chicago did. He did an executive order.
This is secession. The Civil War in 1861 started when there was this little federal installation in the middle of Charleston Harbor. So we're not talking about it was way off the coast somewhere. In the middle of Charleston Harbor is this fort called Fort Sumter. And the South Carolinians, there had been no formal declaration of war, no secession, nothing like that. Hotheads in South Carolina, not even like the whole government of South Carolina, hotheads got control of some cannons, started shooting. First they said, get out. And the Union troops, the federal troops in Charleston Harbor at Fort Sumter, flying an American flag, said, no, we're not getting out. This is federal property. This is like the ICE or the federal building in Portland or Chicago, right? This is not Chicago property. This is federal property, right? This belongs to the federal government. Like an embassy doesn't belong to America. It belongs to Britain or it belongs to Germany. You can't just march in like the Iranians did in 1980. That was a big deal. You just violated the sovereignty of that diplomatic compound. Well, in Chicago and Portland and in San Francisco, those ICE facilities don't belong to Chicago, Portland, or San Francisco. They belong to the federal government. And the locals are saying, screw you. And they're allowing the modern version of cannons to be being fired at Fort Sumter. When people say fireworks, they're talking about these things that you shoot 1,000 feet in the air and then they go boom. Well, you can put the tube sideways and it fires that way into a crowd of police and goes boom. It can blind you. It can maim you. It's like hot metal flying out at explosive speed. That's what makes the colors, titanium and magnesium, all those things, copper. So you shoot that at people, it's a deadly weapon. Or you pass out, remember, Antifa, it's not really an organization. So somebody shows up with a box of 50 powerful green lasers, and everybody in Portland suddenly is aiming green lasers at federal officers' eyes, which at night your pupils are expanded, will blind you, cause permanent eye damage, painful permanent eye damage, or blind you. To me, that's, what's the difference between being shot with birdshot? I mean, I'll take being shot with birdshot over being blinded. And you're just supposed to take it. So we're gearing up for a Fort Sumter moment. Alex Jones, and I agree, he thinks there's going to be a false flag. It's either going to be some illegal alien rally that'll get sniped at, like Las Vegas shooter style, and it'll be blamed on the white redneck MAGAs. The literature will be left there. It's like just like in this book, they shoot up a mosque and then leave like KKK type literature at the scene. So yeah, we're going to see probably a false flag, or it could just be an actual accident. In the I think it's 72, 71, or I think 72, in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. The Bloody Sunday, U2 Sunday, Bloody Sunday. It's like a truck backfires, and the next thing you know, paratroopers are shooting at the peace marchers, and some IRA in the back of the crowd pop off some revolver shots, and you have a total melee. It's like way worse than Kent State. And that started with like a truck backfire. So it's not necessarily got to be a false flag. It can just be you've got these forces that you're pushing together with no zone of separation. I mean, Chicago made them take down the extra barrier that they put outside of the ICE facility. Some commie judge in Illinois said, no, you can't have any barrier. You have to let the Antifas walk right up to you and throw a firework, throw a mortar firework at you. You can't put a fence 100 feet away. Nope, take the fence down. So it's the commies, including judges, the lawfare communists, and the Antifas And these ICE facilities, the federal buildings, like in Portland, that's the Fort Sumter. And it's gearing up for a total conflict. And our enemies know this. Meanwhile, we're throwing our weight around in the Caribbean and trying to convince Russia that we're the most powerful country, and we're on the verge of an internal civil war.
Well, I think
it's crazy times.
We're already in a civil war, though, right? I mean, it's at the elite level right now. Is that? I mean,
yes,
is
totally.
But is that where we're at? I mean, is that what you think, though? Because
totally. Yeah, yes. But like at this No Kings thing yesterday, there's like clips going around of somebody saying you need to get a gun and start killing ICE officers. Yeah, just on his face, right on video. You got the school teacher, the fat school teacher, going for Charlie Kirk, like, Charlie Kirk, like shoot him in the neck. So we're this close to Antifa just coming out with the guns. And you'll never know once you're in black uniforms, you'll never know who it is. Antifa could dress up like ICE and shoot into a crowd. Anybody can dress up like anybody in black and start shooting. And the narrative will be out on the media, like at a supernova before anybody gets to the truth. Like with Charlie Kirk, that was just one guy got shot. And there's within 24 hours, there's 10 narratives. Israel did it. It was a guy behind him. It was a little microphone on his neck that blew up. All these narratives. That was just one guy getting shot. Imagine if there's something on the level of a Las Vegas shooter into, say, the next No Kings March. And all these, Tran-Tifa and Grand Tifa are all murdered. MSNBC and CNN will play it automatically that this was done by a MAGA supporter. A guy was seen wearing a red hat saying, this is Trump country. Remember how they backed up Jussie Smollett? Oh yeah, it's 2:30 in the morning. It's 40 below zero in a blizzard. But I went out the subway and some guys jumped me wearing MAGA hats saying this is MAGA country and put a string around my neck. That was so ludicrous, but they ran with it, right? For weeks, they ran with it straight to your camera. This is what happened to poor Jussie Smollett. Imagine when there's a mass shooting or somebody drives a dump truck full speed through a parade, or a car bomb goes off. We're gearing up for that. People better be ready for that. It's coming.
Well, also, with this is that will add to the temperature, and we'll see how long it goes on for. But this federal government shutdown. Now, I'm all for shutting most of the government, but there are real life consequences right now. Every day that this passes,
like EBT not being honored.
Well, not only that, but look at people are going to work right now. Air traffic controllers, they're not getting paid, and most people live, or a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck. We are now starting week 3.
We're all lining up for our Fort Sumter moment, and meanwhile, Trump is got the grandiose. Maybe it's more than an illusion. I mean, I wish him. I hope that there's some grand conference with Z and Trump, and they sort all this out, and we get on some kind of a financial system. The BRICS thing is not going away. The rest of most of the world is trying to get away from dollar dependency. We're not going to be able to keep that Humpty Dumpty up on the wall. Humpty Dumpty's coming down. But meanwhile, America is like a pressure cooker about to explode. All it's going to take is some false flag or not false flag into a, No Kings type rally.
But every single day now that the federal government continues to remain closed and people aren't getting their paychecks, and here's the other thing too.
Right, the heat continues to go up.
I was telling somebody who's furloughed right now, said, well, we're going to get our back pay. Well, maybe. I mean, in the past you have, but that doesn't guarantee you this time. And the other thing is, and I don't know, but who knows if whatever department that you're in, it could get gutted. You might not have a job to come back to.
And not only that, maybe we're not talking about next week, but next 6 months, 2 years, this kind of thing happens over and over and over again. It happens in countries like Argentina. It happens in Eastern European countries. They're going to say, gee, we're having a bank holiday, and we're coming out with a new currency, and it's going to be 100 to 1. So you used to have, I mean, it's almost to the point of being in a cliche where guys say, Lebanon, this happened like 2 years ago in Lebanon. In the morning, I had enough money to buy like a Mercedes Benz, and in the afternoon, it wouldn't buy a bicycle. Okay, because the government said, in order to preserve the system and keep everything from completely freezing up, we're doing a monetary revaluation. So your pension, your Social Security, it may be paid in full, but its buying power just went from 3 grocery carts to the little hand cart, the little hand basket. Okay, the government will say, look, don't look at us. You got your Social Security. We can't help that it now only buys 3 cans of beans instead of 3 shopping carts. This history teaches this over and over again. This is why if all your money is in a bank in dollars and you just assume, hey, if I ever need to go to the store, I got plenty of money. I can buy all the groceries I need forever. The supply chains may freeze up. You may have the money, but there's no food at the store. Or there's food at the store, but your savings account just got put on something where you can only take out $100 a week. These happen constantly in history.
Do you know how many people I know that they are literally like thinking they're going to make it to their pensions in the next 5 to 10 years, and they're just going to ride off to the sunset like their parents did? And I don't know exactly where this is going to go, like everybody else. But I've also said this is not 20 years ago. The life that our parents lived is not the life that we are going to.
And remember,
prepare.
Not to be like Mr. Silverbug here, although I am. That
you fight off all the vampires, so no vampires come near your house, Matt.
Yeah, but when America was on a gold standard with silver money, that was the era where one dad with one salary working at the hardware store bought a house and a car, and his wife stayed home to raise the kids. Now, maybe it wasn't a 3,000 square foot house. Maybe it was a 1,200 square foot house, and he had 5 kids in a 1,200 square foot house. But he owned the house, the wife stayed home. Once we went off of that standard, it happened so gradually. It's the frog boiling in the pot thing, right? That you don't notice. It's not like a cataclysm happened to one graduating class, but and the feminism helped cloud the waters. I don't want to have a baby. I want to, work for XYZ Corporation in a cubicle during my fertile years, and screw men who, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, right?
I need to take care of myself. I need to be able to, boss bitch.
Yeah. So birth rates plummet. You can't have, the guy is like, I can't afford a wife. I mean, I can barely afford myself living with a roommate. How am I going to get married and buy a house with kids? This all happened since we went off of a real solid money system. And remember, there's this thing called the Cantillon effect. It's like Cantillon, Cantillon effect. When you inflate a currency, your friends get it first. So when they pump this money, when they pump the QE into Wall Street, your Wall Street banker buddies, remember, and the politicians and the Wall Street guys and the federal judges, all their kids go to the same schools, and they all intern for each other. So it's the club. It's like the George Carlin thing. It's a big club and you ain't in it. So the quantitative easing crowd and the congressmen that vote for it and the federal judges and all of these guys, they're all in that club, right? They all went to Yale or Dartmouth. They're all in that club, passing under the table, they're handing intern slips to their other kids. My kid will intern for the judge. The judge's kid will intern here at Goldman Sachs. And we're all going to be making huge money by the time we're 30. And screw the people in flyover country. We don't give a F. So the quantitative easing, it goes first to Wall Street, right? And the bailouts for the banks, which most of that money stays at the top. They get that money in full uninflated purchasing power. It hasn't seeped out to the rest of the economy yet. So when they get $1 million at Goldman Sachs, that $1 million has full purchasing power as if that money hadn't been in the economy last week. They get to go out and buy their new Mercedes-Benz, a new second, third house, no problem. As that money flows out, inflation steals the wealth of the middle and lower classes. That's called the Cantillon effect. So you're not only inflating people to the middle class to the point where a man can't afford a house, can't afford to get married, birth rates plummet, you're bringing in illegals to replace them. But the banksters and the corporate CEOs and the Wall Street financiers, they're all completely happy. They're getting richer and richer and richer because the Cantillon money shovels the full uninflated value to them first. And this is another factor in this kettle that's going to pop. This is where you have people like Steve Bannon, in some ways, talking like, capitalism, the way we're doing it, is not doing the job for the middle class. I don't care if our GDP is 90% going to Wall Street, what's the per capita GDP down at my level in the Rust Belt? Fentanyl Alley, Oxycodone Alley. How's it doing down there in Appalachia and Arkansas? It ain't doing nothing down there. But that top 1%, they're living like it's, like it's Marie Antoinette and Louis XIV. So this is another pressure in the pressure cooker.
I know we said we're going to wrap up an hour. We've already gone over that. But one thing I want to say to you really quick, kind of side note, from a movie standpoint, you've ruined Saving Private Ryan for me like I used to love that movie. And now because of what you said, share with me why you're not a fan of it.
Well, a lot of reasons, but like these are like a platoon that had fought in North Africa, and they're going out past the last American outpost, and they're just walking through sunny fields with the rifle on their shoulder, smoking cigarettes. Like, so what did you do back in the world? And it's like, come on, man, these guys, if they'd had any experience, they would be not walking out in the sunny pasture, right? Because a German sniper would be up in the tree and pop them. And then, or they'd walk into an ambush. Then when they get to that, like, whatever it was, radio thing, it's like, no, we got a mission, but we're going to stop and lose half our guys attacking machine guns.
Why didn't they go around it? Why didn't they just go around them and flank them from behind? But flank them from behind.
Don't even attack it. It's not your job. You can leave one guy, that any Americans that come, or you put out some signs on the points of approach. Watch out, just like they have minefield signs for your friendly people. You don't put a minefield sign for the enemy. You put a minefield sign on your side, right? So you put some signs up saying, watch out, German position ahead. But it's not your job. You've got a separate mission. You're not going to sacrifice half your guys. Anyway, yeah, it's got its elements. I mean, I think it does a good job as far as I can understand it on the actual, Normandy invasion part. But the whole concept of we're going to sacrifice all these guys so that one more kid from this family won't be killed. There's a ship called the Sullivans. They had like 5 Sullivan brothers on one ship. It got blown up. It's like, oh well. Sullivans drew the short straw.
Did you not like Platoon either? Because they were. So you're saying like they're smoking in the jungle, like in Platoon. Remember how they were smoking as they're walking through? Did that not happen?
I wasn't there. I don't know. And anytime people say like, well, this is the Vietnam experience, there were so many Vietnam experiences because it lasted for multiple years. You had Army, Marines, Navy, very different in one area than in another area. But yeah, you're not walking through the jungle smoking, okay? It's the same thing with cowboy movies now. One of the best books I ever read on the West, I think it's called 11 Years Among the Indians or 8 Years Among the Indians. This kid who's kidnapped at like age 8 until he's like older teenager. He's like living with Comanches and Apaches. The Comanches and Apaches would go on these raids, right? Like in Lonesome Dove, or those miniseries. They'd go on these big raids, hundreds of Comanches, and they would, try to steal hundreds of horses and escape. they wouldn't even light a fire because they knew the Texas Rangers were like on their tail. They wouldn't even stop to light a fire. They would eat animals' meat raw. Okay, because if you light a fire, you might as well be putting up a signal to the Texas Rangers. Hey, we're over here.
It's a beacon.
It's a beacon, and you can smell it, you can see it. So all these cowboy movies, they're just like out in Comanche territory, and it's the same thing as Saving Private Ryan. They're just out in Comanche territory. So what do you think? Are there any Indians around here? I don't know. And then they go camping. They got a nice fire in the middle, and they're just like all sleeping around a campfire. It's like,
I got to tell you this last thing real quick. I was talking to a woman here in Arizona, and we were talking about, if the power goes out, this is a conversation I've had many times. But she said, I'm prepared. I have a generator. I'm like, okay, let's just say your generator. All right, how are you going to get it filled? And the other thing is, let's say you do get it filled. Who do you think is going to come? Where are you going to go? If I'm rummaging through neighborhoods, where am I going to go? I'm going to look for the house with the power on, and I'm going to come to it.
Absolutely. And, for forever, the conventional wisdom was solar panels have the advantage that they're quiet. But now with drones, the pillagers, remember, the marauding band, they're not going to be like, 80 IQ morons. The soldiers in the marauding band might be 80 IQ morons, but the guy who survives as a warlord, he's going to be 140 IQ killer, right? Using morons. He's going to have a drone. So he's going to, before he just goes blundering into a neighborhood, he's going to be flying drones over it saying, look at that, solar panels all over that roof. I bet they got a swimming pool. It's still got water in it.
Oh, look at the lights are on. The lights are on.
Look at that big RV behind the house. I bet that's got some fuel in it. Yeah, no, I recommend Jack Lawson's books, A Failure of Civility and the Civil Defense Manuals, because you can't survive in a stick-built American house in the suburbs. You can't survive on your own in warlord times. You got to organize the whole neighborhood like a medieval village, and you can't survive on your own out on a ranch. You think you're hidden out on a ranch. What happens when 20 guys show up and they snipe Dad the first day? Dad goes out to pump water and they just shoot Dad. Now it's like wife and kids. How are you going to defend that ranch? So anyway, but look, before you go, Amazon is totally screwing with authors now. Amazon changed how they're doing everything. So instead of like ordering cases of books that I send to one place in New Jersey or somewhere, now they're saying like send 2 books to this place in Arizona, send 1 book to this place, and with shipping, the cost to ship 10 books is not much more than the cost to ship 2 books. It's a logarithmic curve. So sending cases is very economical. Sending 16 books at a time. When I got to send 1 book at a time at full postage, I'm almost making nothing. I'm making nothing from Amazon. So if you're going to buy these books, if you're going to buy my great books, I would recommend buy them directly from me on PayPal or go to my website, or I've got a post office box. But if you get them from me, they're normally they're like 500-page books, right? So I normally sell them for $24 through Amazon, but I'll sell them for $20 if you get 3 or more, because it's that postage thing. It's just much cheaper to sell 3 than to send 3 books out to 3 different places. So I'll sell them for $20 if you get them through me, and I can sign them. But Amazon is almost completely dried up. It's like X. Somebody at Twitter X said, Bracken, put the thumb on that one. I've been in a complete plateau. I'm followed by Alex Jones, all these top accounts that that I'm back and forth with all the time. And somebody has said Bracken is okay right there at 36,500. That's it. No more. And what they do is they just don't show your posts. You just don't show up in the feeds.
I had sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I had Instagram. Yeah. I put a couple of weeks ago, I put something on my story. I was up on Lake Erie, and I put it on my podcast Instagram handle. And I look at, because you can look and see 24 hours, you can see how many people view it and who views it. I mean, it shot up to like 600 or 700 in the 24-hour period. It's never done that before. Not even close. A couple of posts later, I get 50 now. It goes from 600 to 50. And, I was telling you about my Rumble channel, too. My Rumble channel, I mean, I've gone from, it's dropped by 2/3 view count.
You can say Twitter is a free speech platform. Yes, I can make a meme saying I love whatever. But nobody will see it. That's the old freedom of speech, not freedom of reach.
Just turn it down. Turn your
Elon
level
Musk,
down.
Yeah, if one moderator inside of X says I didn't like that guy's meme, they can basically turn you off. So they can put your volume to 2,000% or to 1%. You're still posting, but you can be liked by Elon Musk, and the next thing you know, you got a million followers. Or you can be like, oh, we don't like this guy, cut him off. We're not going to suspend him yet, but we're just going to make sure nobody sees his posts. So on X, you have to literally type people's names into the search box to see what they've posted. Because if it's anything edgy like my stuff, they just don't want people to see it. So it just doesn't show up in the feed. You have to have your favorite people and type their name in. Otherwise, you'll never see it. But Amazon, I mean, imagine, instead of sending 16 books in cases to one place and getting that postage break, it's like send one book to each state. They're basically saying we don't want your books. See, I'm still for sale on Amazon, but I have to send them to Amazon at a loss now. It's crazy.
What's your Twitter handle and then your Gab account real quick?
I'm Matt Bracken. I'm Matt_Bracken48 on Twitter, and I think I'm Matt Bracken on Gab.
And Substack
too. I'll always parallel post on Gab because Gab is tiny compared to Twitter, but I actually get more interaction on Gab.
I get very little interaction on Gab. Substack though, I mean, you using your Substack more?
I should, but I'm working on this Ireland novel, and for a while I was trying to do a Substack every week. I have great respect for our friend James Howard Kunstler. That man is like a disciplined old school writer. He cranks out a great column every Monday and Friday that I never miss.
I saw it. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes when I was with him this summer. The guy is clockwork.
He's disciplined.
I didn't even want to make any noise. I was staying up on the second floor of his house. I don't want to walk around on the floor because I didn't want to screw him up. He's down in the basement writing his blog. I told him that.
He's hardcore, man. And he sent me an advanced copy of his new novel, which is awesome.
What the hell? He didn't send me one. What's up with that?
I don't know.
I'm going to give him some shit for that.
Well, he put out a thing on his Substack basically saying, if you want an advanced copy, email me. I don't know who he sent that out to, but he sent me one, but it's excellent. He's a great writer. Yep. He's fun to do. And I love doing these one-on-ones with you, but when you mix together the guests, when Colum, Kunstler, some of these metal guys you've had on lately, what was the name of the last guy? He was terrific.
Vince Lancy.
Oh, he's terrific. He's great. You've had some really top guests on. You said you're going to have Sheckman?
Tomorrow. Yeah, Sheckman, Andy tomorrow, and then Melody Wright and Dave Collum together on Thursday, and then Martin Armstrong's coming back on Friday. I like the mashups, man. The mashups are good.
And when you're just seeing the name and you see these two, it's like I want to hear their conversation.
Right, and
forget about Mike Ferris. We know what Mike's going to say.
Yeah. I'm third. I'm just the organizer, the facilitator, the point guard.
You can just have a Subway sub in front of you.
I just leave. I leave for 2 hours. I always enjoy these combos, man. I know it won't be that long before we talk again.
No.
Mic drop.
Talk to you later.